I was outgrading the driveway. There it is! My M! Still in one piece. The two little tabs broke off the back, but I have a GMC again, but I don't need that because I like the DG. Here we go. Here she is, 1964 C10. We're gonna put the Duramax and the two-wheel drive Allison in there, making it a legitimate tow truck. The only issue that we're having is the math. The intake manifold's getting cut right now, and as long as the Sniper is able to handle the amount of boost that a diesel puts out, we'll be laughing. The engine needs to have a water pump. They're a pain in the ass to do because of the front pulley. There's a bolt that goes behind there. And I also need to do some work to the oil pans and do a transmission service at the same time. So let's get into it. Here we go. All right, so we're back on the C10. Sorry for the echo. Even with the giant engine in there, there's still an echo. But we're gonna start routing all of our pipes, intercooler, and intake. So we're running into a few issues because of COVID. Really can't get any parts, so I don't have any intercoolers. But I do know the size of them, so I think I'm gonna cut one out of wood so that we can weld all our intercooling piping in place. You see that bolt pattern? It's the same when you do it this way. So what that means is this pipe for my radiator, which used to go in behind and come out this way, I can just turn it around and point it at this way. So I can drop that down. Even though this pipe isn't the same size as what's coming out of the Duramax, it wouldn't be the Boss Garage if we didn't customize our custom parts, right? Let's cut that one off and put a bigger out arm there. Get as much flow as we can. We'll do the same with the bottom. But what I meant to say is, look how neatly you just turn this whole thing around and then it ends up right where it's supposed to be, a little 90-degree hose. And you can even polish this or paint it, whatever. Very, very nice. So let's make our intercooler and then we'll go from there. Here we go. Okay, so we got a 4x4, which is about the same width as a intercooler, which is about 3 inches. The intercooler is about 2 feet long, and this thing is exactly 4 inches. So I'm gonna cut it, and this was laying on the floor because we were using this to shave some styrofoam. You'll find out why soon. I haven't used a handsaw in at least 20-25 years, and kind of just for nostalgia, I just want to use a handsaw. That wasn't too bad. Nice and square anyway. Now, just have to make an intercooler. I know what you're thinking, Rich, you idiot. If you don't bead roll those ends, the hoses are gonna pop off. I'll let future Rich worry about that, but this is basically the bottom of my intercooler. And here's number 2. They're gonna be about this far apart. I can mount that to the front and know roughly where my hoses are gonna go. I wonder how much CFM that flows. I am just this is the sad part of the build, because taking the whole truck apart again, it's not gonna look like a truck, but it's super cool too, because now we can start it. And get at everything really easy, so. Looks like I did a whole lot. I did, but everything's just kind of tacked together. Those need about 4 or 5 days worth of work. Alright, so as plans go, they change daily, and I just found out the D&M Precision is back in full production, and I haven't finished machining my part of the intake plenums yet, so I'm going to do that before I get to the intake piping. They're going to put a taper on it, so this is actually going to lift the intakes up a hair to avoid the AC and the alternator. And I ordered these adapters to go from 4.5 inch, which we have to weld, down to 3, and these look like ass. I can't believe they look much better online. I don't think we can fix this. So in the meantime, while D&M is working on their stuff, I'm gonna keep heading back to V&R and Tuesley's and see if I can find like an adapter or a step down in a transport truck or one of the trucks to make this look much nicer. I'm gonna order some quick disconnects because we have to take the intake off from the piping. I can't have a giant snaking intake pipe on there. So we've got our radiator for the Duramax, and I've been on some forums and they said that the biggest issue with the Duramax swap and the C10 was they didn't really have room for a radiator. This is the biggest radiator that Flex-A-Lite makes, and it's a dual flow, so both fittings are on the same side of the radiator. But what's really cool about it is the way that they do the tubes between the fins. Instead of having one solid tube where your coolant would go through and then your fins are on top, what they told us when we sat down with them is they would find that the coolant around the outside of the tube would cool while the center would still have warmer coolant going through. It didn't dissipate the heat that well. So what they did was run channels in between. So it's much more mating surface of the aluminum to the coolant, and it flows much better. On top of that, all the fins in between are actually louvered. If you see your fin, they've got little pieces sticking out that catch more air. So he said if this doesn't keep it cool, there's nothing that will keep it cool. This one I think is meant for an LS, but that means that the fittings are not the same size as our water pump. So I think we are going to get Vince. The neighbor is an awesome aluminum welder. We'll introduce him soon. And we'll put some bigger fittings on it because we have to customize the custom parts. That's just what we do at the Boss. On top of that, this thing's got a 100 PSI burst rating, and unless we blow a head gasket and throw some massive compression into our cooling system, I'm sure that something else is gonna blow up first. They also have a really good power steering cooler for us. So we'll mount that last, somewhere in between, out of the way, where it catches some air. And because we wanted a full radiator, we said no room for a transmission cooler. We've got a nice transmission cooler with a built-in fan in it already. So I think we have a little bit of room on the passenger side there beside the transmission, so we'll mount that. And what's cool about this system is it's got built-in temperature sensor in it, which will automatically turn the fan on. You don't have to wire anything else. So when it gets up to temperature, automatic fan comes on, peace of mind. We're definitely gonna put a gauge in the cab, make sure that we are not doing anything stupid, but we'll mount that. Keep in mind that we are doing kind of one-off things. We take parts and then we put bigger fittings on it, we change it. Companies are brave working with us because we do things to the max. On that note though, all the products that we're using are on the links down below if you're interested at all on doing the exact same thing. Okay, so this is the original intake from the Holly, and it's only got one bolt here, 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5, I guess. What I thought would be better is if we added a couple more holes. So what I did was I put this on top and drilled the bottoms up, and I just flipped this around and lined up the outside 2 holes and then drilled the extra holes. Now I can vice grip this back in place and drill the missing holes, and then we will have 3 extra bolts to hold it in place for all that extra boost. It's a lot of crap that went down that intake. Yeah, we'll give her a good bath. Don't you worry. Okay, so I have to say that this little Milwaukee 90-degree 2-inch die grinder is incredible. I just ported and polished my intakes, and this was mainly done, the CNC went down just in the middle. I put the angles on there and then made the 2 ports match the 1 port, and we couldn't CNC that because it was off center. One runner's longer than the other, so I said that I would do this. But all of that is from the die grinder. I already cleaned up once, and then this is my vacuum. Just, there is a lot of aluminum here. 4-amp battery on there, and it would go for almost an hour. If you push too hard, it just gummed up the burr. I did dip it in some ATF once in a while. That kind of kept it cool, and it worked really slick. So now that the ports are done, we can send those off to the machine shop. They're gonna put a taper on it, clean up the outsides, clean up all my little oopsies, and then we're good to go. I'm going to get them to resurface the top and take it a 1/4 inch down on this side while staying flush here. What that'll do is it'll tip the intake up a little bit, which will help me miss the AC compressor and the alternator. Then once they've put that angle on it, then they can put this plate on top and measure the holes, and they're going to drill and tap the holes so that I can bolt the intakes to the adapters. Can't do that until they resurface it because the angle of the bolts is going to change slightly. Marked it all out. So the nubs, you line up the nubs, you line up the bolt holes. If they get it wrong and they drill it over here, then I guess we'll just drill a whole bunch of extra holes in here and bolt it down with 1,000 bolts. That should be it. Here we go. Okay, everything looks nice and neat and clean underneath there. You see a couple cc's of water coming out, and that's just condensation. Same thing as in the transmission pan. You can see a little bit of water in the front there. That's why we drop it. We change everything. It's been sitting so long. No filings on the magnet though, and everything looks really good up top there. So what we're gonna do is clean the pans, paint them, and make them look all pretty. And then I grabbed the oil pan off of the other engine already. So we'll paint that one, and then we'll separate the transmission and that pan in the morning, weld in our bungs, and put it all back together again. And just in case you guys are wondering, there is a second filter, not just your spin-on. And that goes right in that hole there. So even though there's a drain plug and a nice spin-on, once in a while you should change this one too. Here we go. Okay, so this is an Allen bolt that goes through behind the starter and attaches your torque converter to your flywheel. Now I need to split this to get this oil pan off because some idiot at GM thought it'd be a good idea to put a bolt going, see this bolt right, no, where is it? This one. See that one right there? That one goes through your bell housing there. So you gotta take the transmission off to get at this one, which is fine, no big deal. We'll do that, but I stripped the Allen inside this bolt, and I'd show you the socket. Well, it was more of the Allen socket that which went into the scrap bin pretty quick. And then I got frustrated. I'm like, yeah, this build is going too good. Something had to break like that. But then GM's like, wait a minute, Rich. It is also a 15 millimeter. You just put your socket on the outside. You get 2 chances to strip something. So, best project in the world. I'll finish stripping that. We're not gonna strip it. We're gonna finish rolling it over, taking that off, split the transmission, pan's back on again, and then we'll take this pan off, clean that up, make that all look good. Maybe pull a rod cap off and take a quick gander at that, and then we'll get into the front, do the water pump and whatever else. So if you're wondering why I'm doing this, somebody dropped this at some point and just got a hole in it. So no comments as to like, oh, just drill and tap your thing in there, a little bit of grease and you won't get filings in there. Yeah, she's got a leak. Here we go. Didn't have the camera rolling, but just basically just put the transmission down, lifted up a hair off, and then lifted the engine up, just kind of tapped that, and down she went. Golden. Let's lift her up and get at it. So we got this nice and clean. We got the windage tray nice and clean. The windage tray keeps the oil from splashing. Your crankshaft spinning right on top of there. It lets the oil run in and drop down rather than having like an oily mist, like a fog inside. They actually count that as a parasitic loss because your crankshaft spinning around, hitting that mist, which actually slows it down, which is no good. These get torqued to, and you make sure that you, like that. Now where the fittings worked out on top here, this one I was able to put off to the side. The reason I wanted to pull the pan too is to make sure that I stuck it in between here. I didn't want to hit any of the webbings inside. This one, where it ended up, I could have maybe moved it over a little bit, but it gets right in the way of this bolt, so I put a stud in there. So I just cut a bolt that had longer threads on it, threaded it in, and then we'll just put a nut on there because I can't walk this bolt in with that fitting there, and that's already sealed in there, so we're gonna leave that alone. On top of that, I want to make sure that these grooves are nice and clean. There is no actual gasket there, so I want to use some good, we got Ultra, RTV, the Permatex stuff, silver stuff, gray stuff, whatever. Put a nice little bead along there, and then tighten it up, let it sit for 10 minutes, and then snug it up the rest of the way to full torque. So here we go. Don't get too crazy. Just a nice bead all the way around. I bought a gasket kit and it had silicone in there, black RTV silicone, but I like the Permatex stuff better. Hopefully I got enough. There we go. Ugh. Not too much, but you do want to fill in the grooves there. The upper pan bolts get torqued to 15 foot-pounds and the lower ones to 89 inch-pounds. Just like a cylinder head, start in the middle, work your way out, and call her good. Now you might just have to use an Allen wrench rather than a socket at the back because it's too deep, but it is what it is. Get it as tight as you can. There we go. get the front balancer off to get out the water pump. Stop putting stuff in front of other stuff. Okay, so we got the water pump housing out, and this took a little beating when it dropped. So that's not the point though. I saw a big mark right at the edge of where the water pump would sit, and I thought, oh, that's kind of odd. But then the new one has the exact same mark. I don't know if you guys know what that's about. Either way, it's going back in again. It's late at night and nobody's open at 2 in the morning. So black O-ring on the aluminum part, and the orange O-ring goes against the block. And this sits in here something like that. And then the bolts, I torque them to like 25 foot-pounds. I don't know if that's the right torque or not, but I feel that should be about it. And it's too late to look stuff up. This will go fine, no problem. Here we go. Okay, got the engine hanging up there again. Now we just got to move these brackets ahead an inch, but none of those bolts line up with the plate if I was to slide it ahead. So I got to cut those bolts off, re-drill all the holes, but that is for another day because I'm tired. So we'll carry on tomorrow morning. Here we go. So I drilled a new hole about 1 inch over and then trimmed that off so it looks factory. I can put this here, that'll have slid everything forward. You can see where the old paint was. I can drill the new holes. Yeah, I'll mark that hole, I'll drill that, then I can drill these two. We'll use the factory stud on the front, stick some 1/2 inch bolts in there. We got our whole engine slid forward 1 inch. Here we go. Okay, so we've got our fast mounted. We saw that in the video before. Now there is a return from your Duramax. The extra fuel goes back to the tank, but there's also a return from the fast. So it separates the fuel vapors and sends that back to the tank. You cannot tee those in. You have to run separate lines for the return for the fast and for the Duramax, and we did that. And I had just enough line from Grassroots. If I would have did my return from the fast to this far port, and instead I cut it and put it to the closer port, and that leaves this one about 2 feet too short. So on that sad note, I know that you guys wanted to see it run and fire, and I would have done that if D&M was still closed, but we've done a lot of grinding and stuff in the shop here. and I don't want to risk sucking in any crap because we don't have the intakes or the filters on the engine. So I'm sorry guys, I'm just as disappointed as you are, probably more, that we didn't fire it up. I'm going to order the last of my line so that I can reach the fitting. We have to put our vent in yet, and then put some fuel in the tank, and then hook up the wiring and the last of the fuel lines and the intake pipes for the engine. On a very good note, I was walking through V&R and look at these sweet 4.5 or whatever adapters down to 3. Now, some would say that this is a rim for like a go-kart drag car, but what it really is an adapter for the intake. So as soon as we get the intake back from D&M, I can get Vince welding this on, welding in all the proper piping. We got a bunch of stuff from V&R, a couple transport trucks and stuff. And what I really want to see is the intake on the engine with the radiator mounted, the cooling pipes and everything done. We can get at it now. I don't want to rush it and fill the engine up with crap now that everything is kind of going again. So thanks for watching, guys. Another C10 video coming up soon. I am going to keep working on this. We will fire this thing up soon, I promise, because I want them to start driving this thing. Remember, if you're not filthy, you're not rich, get out in your shop, work, finish your builds, check out the website, get at it. Here we go.